Hey, first, don't look at the hair. I know I need a haircut. And don't look at the red. I almost always wear red. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about mortgages and divorce and checks. And it's totally different than what anyone else has been talking about. There's not a lot of videos talking about this, but those that are seem to be, money professionals, tax professionals, mortgage professionals. Where I'm going is a totally different way than where they went. This is probably going to affect more people who haven't really thought much about it, but maybe some have. So let's find out. So back in 2020, my ex and I bought a house, the house that I'm still in. And we bought it through a bank, one of the local banks. It wasn't a big bank, but we bought it, through a local bank. That's where we got our mortgage. And less than 6 months later, they gave the mortgage to a different local bank. And then a year and a half after that, they gave it to Chase Bank. Chase is all over the country. So that was kind of a big deal. The one lucky thing is that Chase was actually about 45 seconds away. So I could just go over to the bank and pay it in person. Wasn't a big deal. I wasn't necessarily happy it was with Chase because, I didn't select them. They weren't a local bank. But that's just how it goes. Anyway, in 2003, we decided to refinance because the rates had gone down. When we got this house, the rates were pretty high. And in 2003, the rates had dropped, and we found out that we could save about $250 if we refinanced. That's a monthly payment. So it's like, okay, we'll do this. So we do that. Things are going well. Then about 2010, we start getting all these letters from Chase wanting us to refinance because the economy tanked in 2008, 2009, and there were all these folks who were having difficulty keeping up with their mortgage, and, rates just dropped. At this point, rates had dropped, but our financial situation wasn't necessarily better. I'm not saying it was the worst. I mean, truthfully, my ex was still working at her job. I was still able to land some gigs because I'm an independent consultant. But I wasn't getting the kind of money that I was getting before because even in my industry, people were having difficulties, so they were offering less. One of them actually offered $25 an hour to go to Atlanta, and I said, please, that's not happening. It just wasn't happening. But I did find one in New York City that paid close to what I was used to making. So I said, yeah, I'll take that. All expenses covered. I get to be in New York City 4 days a week eating pretty good meals. I took that. So anyway, they just kept hammering us with all this stuff. And we decided, no, we didn't want to start all over again. At this point, we'd been paying the mortgage for 10 years. We did not want to refinance for another 30-year mortgage. Because of how the economy was going, we didn't want to take a chance and refinance for a 15-year mortgage. That's probably too bad right now, but that's life. So we didn't do it. The next thing you know, after a couple of years, they sell it to Carrington Mortgage. The first time it's actually sold to a company that doesn't own anything in New York State. I'll be coming back to that. So everything goes along. I'm not going to say everything went smoothly because obviously it didn't. In 2019, my ex files for divorce. So now this is something else that, we have to deal with. And here's the thing. It lasted from, 2019 through 2020. It was the exact same date, except for the year when the divorce was filed and the day that it was over. And early on, when they were initially looking for whatever assets I had, and I was still taking care of my mother, basically that meant that I hadn't worked in about 3 years because, I was trying to take care of my mother. My ex was helping me initially, but still, I'm taking care of my mother. I can't travel. I can't do anything else. I've got, my funds that are dwindling, but luckily I can use mom's money because I'm the power of attorney. So, I've at least got both of these. But now, here we go. And the thing is that everything was up for grabs. The house was up for grabs. And my thing on that was, if it was decided that either there was a certain amount I had to pay or we had to sell the house, fine. I mean, truthfully, I wanted this house, but my thought was, okay, if that's the case, then I will find an apartment for my mother and I. We will leave, and then y'all can sell it, because that's where my thoughts were. Now, this is going to kind of sound a little controversial, but this is the truth. The thing is that it's a nice house. It would have been worth a lot more if we had made more changes to it. It's a 5-bedroom ranch. And more people wanted 5-bedroom ranches. Actually, they wanted ranches, but from the outside, it doesn't look as big as it is, but it's 5 bedrooms. And I'll say we never made the improvements that the house needed in order to increase its value. Made a couple, but not all the things that we should have done. So what happened is that I had a mortgage person that I knew come in and do an evaluation of the house. She walked through the entire thing, and then she went back and she came up with this amount. And the house had increased in value, but then you had to take away all the things that needed to be fixed and altered, and the worth of the house dropped after that. And if you split it in half, and we also showed how much was still owed on the house, each of us would not have gotten that much money if we had sold it for the lower amount, and we would have had to. So that was one of those kind of things that had to be discussed. Like I said, I didn't have any income. I don't know what she was doing for income, but I had nothing because to take care of my mother. So all of a sudden, things started to look like I'm going to get out of this really easy. And, I wasn't necessarily upset. But then what happened around the early part of 2020? COVID. So COVID hits, and all of a sudden, house prices jump. Now, at least at that early part, they hadn't jumped as high as they would get to go. But what happened is that all of a sudden, at that time, looking at everything that had to be done, it had jumped about $20,000. So, in order to get the divorce, I was requested, actually that's how it was, I wasn't forced to, I was requested to pay $10,000 to get the divorce. I thought, wow, that what a deal. Definitely gonna go that route. Pay that and we will be done. So did that. I get the house signed over to me in the divorce decree. I got to come back to that also. But in the divorce decree, I get the house. But it turns out that just because it's signed in a divorce decree does not necessarily mean I am the only owner of the house. My lawyer didn't like her lawyer. It was just a battle. I mean, I guess they knew each other. It was horrible. So she got a couple of things signed that she thought were more important at the time to protect my mother and me for a couple of different things. But she didn't get anything signed talking about transferring the house to me. It was in a divorce decree, but, you know, that's just how that goes. So what ends up happening is that the next year, I get this check. And the check comes from the mortgage company because the taxes had gone down. So how much they took too much. So they sent me this check. So I go to the bank and the bank says, we can't do anything with this because her signature is not on it. And I said, well, in the divorce decree, though, it came to me. They said, nope, we can't do anything about it. You know, you have to either get the mortgage company to send you another check or you have to get her to sign the check. You have to do something. So now I get my lawyer. I said, hey, I know that when we signed the divorce decree, she signed it over to me, but they're not having it. The mortgage company is not having it, and the bank's not having it. So my lawyer now goes through the process of finding her because, you know, she had left the state. I didn't know where she was. She said, okay, we will do this. because now you've got to get it back to New York State. So they end up hiring a private detective. They did. I knew nothing about it. Then they tell me what state she's in, didn't tell me anything else, and said that she had gone to see an attorney down there and that we were going to get this done. I'm thinking, great, this is going to be a good deal. And it took a little longer than I had hoped it would. And the reason being is because once COVID started to diminish at least a little bit, the state courts had a big backlog. So it took a while, but eventually they get this thing signed and notarized. And now, per New York State, I own the house. It's totally mine. So I send a copy of it to the mortgage company. Now, the mortgage company, as I said earlier, is not in New York State. They happen to be in Illinois somewhere. That's the best I've got. And I think this is going to be a good deal. They're going to send me a new check with just my name on it, and things were good. Here's the first lesson that you need to learn. When we financed the house, when we first bought the house and we signed everything, we signed it in both of our names. So my name's on it, her name's on it. It turns out that if you're worried about anything that could possibly happen, which most people when they get married aren't thinking about, but you probably need to think ahead, you need to sign it as one person or the other person. Why? Actually, there's two reasons. One, because if a check comes and it has both people's names on it, it has to have "or" on it. And if it has "or" on it, that means that whoever gets the check can deposit it into their bank account. Now, if everything is going well, that's not a bad deal. You know, check comes in. Both of us aren't here because I was traveling for my work, and at a certain point she was traveling. Well, we can't do anything until we're both together. So if you had a situation like that, then it doesn't matter because either person can sign it. Even if you have a joint account at a bank, you can still sign it, you know, one person or the other. It can go in there because now you've got the bank account that has been created in both names, but with the word "or." So either one of them can sign. However, we had no clue about that. I had never planned on buying a house. My ex wanted to buy a house. We bought a house. We just followed with everything, you know, what everyone else was saying. And the mortgage company would not take her name off of the mortgage because they're out of state and they said that they don't have to follow New York State rules. I called my lawyer. My lawyer said, unfortunately, out-of-state mortgage companies can do it that way. So the thing is that last year I got a check. I took it to the bank. I talked to them. They said they couldn't do anything with it. But I didn't have the divorce papers signed at that point. This year, I had it signed. New York State says this is your house. You're good. Everything should be great. The mortgage company sends me a check with both our names on it. I, this week, go up to the bank with all the information that they needed, what New York State said. And I get this person in their office, in the bank, and I explain the situation. And she says, I'm sorry, but if it doesn't have "or" on there, there's nothing we can do. I said, there's nothing. And she says, well, you can try putting it through the outside, you know, thing, which I can't remember what it's called right now, but you can try doing it, you know, that way, more of a direct deposit. However, if they catch it, they're going to fine you $35. Okay, what are the odds they're going to catch me? About 95%, because they catch a lot of people. Why? Because they want to get those fees. So I said, okay, that's not going to work. I said, well, okay, fine. So I get up and she says, hey, you should take your check with you. Oh, you need to take your check. I said, why am I going to take the check? She says, well, it's your check. I said, actually, it's not my check. It doesn't belong to me. I can't do anything with it. I'm not taking it. She says, but you have to take it. I said, actually, no, I don't. She says, well, what am I supposed to do with it? I said, that's your problem. I can't do anything with it. You won't allow me to deposit it. I can't send it back. If it's going to get shredded anyway, then I might as well just leave it here, because if anyone else finds it, where are they going to take it and do anything with it? Doesn't matter. Now, she was upset. Me, I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know what you're upset about. This is money that would have been nice for me to have. And you and whoever the guy was last year and whoever the person was before the year before that ain't letting me have this check. You're not letting me do anything with this money. So I don't care. So if I get a check again next year, which I probably will, I'm just going to shred it, when it comes. But I was not going to take that check out of the bank with me because I was just that irked. And that's not usually my style. Usually I will defer to the moment and I will be the one who walks out totally upset and totally mad, no matter what it is. This time I decided, no, I'm going to put some pressure on someone else. Let them worry about it because I don't care. Now, the lesson here is that if you're going to do a mortgage with someone else, you need to make sure the language says or. Like I said, the benefit is if a check comes and it needs 2 signatures, but there's only one person available, one person can sign it and can deposit it in the check. If you have both names on the checking account, both people, whichever one can go there and put it in and everything will be good. If you have separate accounts at different banks, then, you may have some kind of battle down the line. But in essence, that at least is still better than being in the situation I'm in now where I get this check. There's nothing I can do with it. And, I'm frustrated. Last year, I actually took the check back with me and sent it back to the mortgage company saying, look, I can't do anything with this. So you do what you need to. But if it's, my thought, you should reduce the amount I'm paying on the mortgage. Just modify it based on this check. They didn't do that. I have no idea what they did with the check. Probably they shredded it because they didn't send it back. But it's just something that y'all need to know. Like I said, the other videos I looked at, nobody mentioned that. No one talked about checks at all. So even though this may be long, I had to tell the whole story so that you could see what the problems could be later on. That's a sad story, isn't it? But, that's what life does to you sometimes. Anyway, my name is Mitch Mitchell. I hope none of you go through this, but I know a bunch of you will. And I wish you a great day.